Welcome to the new series of Splitfire gaming podcast for the new year of, 2022. There's been a tiny gap in these episodes. Sorry for that. The real world intruded, and I ended up playing loads of games and then didn't have time to talk about it. So what an excuse. What's happened since the last episode? 40k got more complicated. It's now about as complicated as that note that the Zodiac Killer produced. And that's about it. So on with that introduction, that's all done. I'll introduce my guest today, who is Scott. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you very much.
It's good of you to turn up to be the first. How does it feel to be the first guest of the new year?
Well, it really vindicates how long it's taken us to get onto the podcast by having such a delay and being first of the year. I'm definitely worth waiting for, as I'm sure everyone will agree.
You might as well do it with style.
Well, that's as I do everything else, obviously.
Exactly. Because Graham's done it before you and Alan's done it before. So they were just the warm-up acts in many ways.
Well, yeah. In so many different ways.
Did you have an exciting 2021 in hobby?
In hobby in 2021, attended the Cardiff Crusade, which was excellent. Had lots of fun in lots of different ways. Cardiff is a really savage place, and the event was really, really genuinely fun.
Just to point out, we agreed before the recording to edit what we said about how savage Cardiff was as a place.
Savage place. Really got stuck into VC on a much more heavy basis rather than sort of flitting around Empire quite a lot.
Don't we all know the multiple screen list that you came up with?
Otherwise, in the hobby world, unfortunately, didn't get to attend as many events as I'd like to between COVID and work and everything else, sadly, but reinvigorated, ready for what is looking to be a very active 2022.
Yeah, lots of tournaments coming up. At least 3 or 4 I'm aware of that I've signed up for already.
Yeah, so there's the Stockton tournament this weekend, which is a smaller one in the north. We've got Triple Crown as ever, the big GT later in the year.
That's April, I think.
The North Remembers, which unfortunately I can't attend, but I know you're
going to that one. Yeah. Cardiff 2, Electric Boogaloo.
We've then got the Northern event, that Triple Crown run in the Derby area. And that just takes us up to mid-July. I'm really hoping that some of organisers realise that every event is in the front half of the year and find some events in the autumn to attend, which would be an absolute treat.
Autumn's sort of left out, isn't it? Because Graham usually runs his in the winter to see out the year. And then, autumn's this big, fertile, open territory to just someone can invade it.
If anyone wants to organise a tournament in autumn, I can guarantee at least a couple of people who are definitely going to be there.
I'll be there. I've got no life.
Well, exactly. Like, what better have we things to do? Like, my wife doesn't want to spend any more time with us. The dog's trying to get rid of us. I'm all about a Warhammer event.
There you go. You heard it here first. All 3 people who are still listening to this. If one of you wants to organise a tournament, do it. Did you get much painted last year?
Did I personally get not as much as you?
I went on a right crazy painting stream.
What did I personally paint last year? It wasn't a lot. Anyone who knows me knows my painting is my least favourite part of the hobby and the area that I'm particularly not very good at or enjoy. I think I personally painted last year 6 river trolls for me orcs and goblins, 6 crypt ghouls for VC.
Similar sized models there.
Did I? I sadly don't think I painted anything else last year. I base coated quite a few things, which my wife then painted, but personally, that's all I painted, I think, last year.
I made if we ever do a review of the year, which I don't know if I will or not, but last year I said I wanted 2,400 points of High Elves painted, and I blew past that target by mid-year. I don't know what went wrong or what went wrong with me. I just couldn't stop painting. So now more than half of my high elves are finished. But however, I'm now burnt out. So I was going to do some painting today, and I couldn't be bothered to get the paints out.
Actually, you've done this year, though. You have, to be fair, you have done incredibly well with your high elf painting.
I had to get into the mood, and it's funny once you get into the habit of it. And I just was looking for more stuff to paint because I used to just I'll paint the trim on this unit, and then I'll move and do a bit of this unit, then do a bit of this unit. Last year, I want this unit done, and I'm not doing anything else until it's done. Then I'll move on to the next unit, and that seemed to work a lot more. So I haven't been doing that for the 3 prior years.
For the little painting I actually do, it's predominantly done. I'll paint a unit at a time.
I definitely think that's the way to do it, having failed massively previously. What else have I got written down here? Achievement of last year. Did you win anything last year? I can't remember.
I came 4th in Cardiff out of, 70 people who attended? That was pretty good.
That was big, that.
To be fair, I was quite pleased with that, considering I took, for a vampire list, is a very fluffy list. Me general can be cannoned off the board, and then the entire army falls apart. So that was quite an achievement. Had some incredible games, but no. Did I win anything last year? No.
I haven't won anything yet. I don't know why I play this game. Yes, I do. What else? I should have written this in sort of legible English, shouldn't I? Oh, I've put here filth lists, which I assume is a dig at yourself.
I mean, I think that's incredibly rude.
It's not untrue, though, is it?
It's absolute. How dare you, sir? In the I suppose, the current English comp system that is the most well used, which is the good guys at Triple Crown. In their scoring, the highest comp scoring list I've taken this year or period, I think, is about +5. What is your list?
It doesn't say on me notes what my lists were.
Let's assume it's at least -5 because you're an absolute monster. I am a man of fluff and fun-themed lists.
2 Terrorgeists and Scabscrath. That's not fluff. I don't care how you've manipulated the comp system to give you +5, but that's not fluff.
I disagree. I think that's rude for you to suggest otherwise. Rude.
I just thought I've put here. We've played each other quite a few times, and it's I don't know how to say it without making it sound like I'm being nasty when I'm not. But it's not like finesse tactics. You are a massively aggressive fantasy player, I've noticed.
No, you're right. To be fair, I do like aggressive lists, to be honest. I've written, and to be fair, I've alongside Steve played around with what can only be described as an outrageous zombie horde list for vampires, which comps really, really well.
Is that the one you played on Alan's channel?
Yes. Yeah, I played against Alan.
God. What was it, 250 zombies?
It starts with about 200 zombies, and it can finish the game with up to 650 zombies.
No thanks.
Which how many I've got? I think I've got about 700 zombies in the shed, I think. But it's an absolute grind fest, which is hilarious. But you're right, it's not the type of Warhammer I tend to play. I tend to play like aggressive, for better or worse. A lot of the times worse. A lot of the times hilariously well. But I like aggressive games of Warhammer, as you said, yeah. Like all or nothing. The same way I play my Magic phase. If it's not worth 6 dice, is it even worth casting?
I was just about to come on to this. I think the first time we met was playing Triumph and Treachery with Andy and Liam, I think.
Yes.
Just the thing I come away with is 6 dice and everything, because why would you do it any other way? But, right?
If in for a penny, in for a pound.
You can just the risk of miscast. It's just a occupational hazard.
It is. I completely agree. And frankly, I smile almost as much when I get sucked into the warp as I do when I cast something with 6 dice, because it's hilarious, and that's why you play the game.
That's appropriate for the topic we're going to come on to. Oh, you won it. You did. What tournament did you win? Was that the year
I
before?
won the first. Yeah, it was the year before. It was the first event that Tim hosted in
Yes, that's
Derby.
right. No, that was Sheffield, wasn't it?
Sheffield. Apologies. Yeah, you're right. It was Sheffield, and I mean, coincidentally, that was also with me 3 Scream Vampire List.
That's just don't read too much into that.
To be fair, though, at that event and at Cardiff, when I finished 4th, I was incredibly fortunate with my list to not have to play any Empire players with cannons, because that's the bane of my list.
That was the one where I played Steve, and where it was like that hard cut from I'm winning to I'm packing up my army having lost. I don't know what happens.
Yeah, that quite often happens when you're playing Steve, to be honest.
Yeah, that's skill he's got. I lost. I don't exactly know what happened.
It was going well for a little while, and then all of a sudden, it really, really wasn't.
Well, we might as well go on to the topic then. So we've decided to rate our top 5 spells in the Magic phase in Warhammer Fantasy. This is from the 8 laws, but also can include any of the individual army laws. So what's that? Dark, High, Beasts, Chaos Dwarf, Vampires, and then there's the laws of Chaos as well, isn't there? So all the gods.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I've essentially stuck to the rule book, the big red book Magic laws.
I have mostly stuck to that.
There is incredible spells in some of the army-specific laws.
I couldn't.
For any players out there like myself, we'll just throw a huge shout-out to Ash Storm, which is undoubtedly the greatest spell in the game.
Yeah.
Hands down. It's incredible.
I was going to give a special mention to that myself, because it's so good.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
And it synergizes so well with the rest of the army. It makes things flammable, stops them charging, stops them casting spells. Like, it's the law of Hashut is the law of fire on steroids.
It's like everything else. It's the law of fire mixed in with shadow and heavens and all sorts.
Yeah, because Chaos Dwarfs are proper dwarfs. Real dwarfs worship Hashut.
I agree. The dwarfs abandoned their kin and left them to die in the wilderness, and then they managed to survive, and then refused to talk about it ever again. So that's how the noble and honourable and grudge-bearing dwarfs deal with their own kin.
That is something you and I can 100% agree on. That's exactly how it happened. Chaos Dwarfs are actually the good guys, and the other dwarfs are traitors and cowards.
Backstab their own kin, and they have the gall to write grudges in their own book.
Any dwarf players out there who may listen to this, you deserve it. You're bad people, and you're bad people.
There you go. There's a first point of agreement of the episode. Did you have any trouble picking a top 5? Because there's a lot to choose from.
Oh. Well, I kind of started by removing the killer spells as an option to myself. So I love, as we sort of just touched on, I love the killer spells. I love a spell worth throwing 6 dice at. Final Transmutation is undoubtedly an amazing spell, and something I've used quite a lot with my Empire. Purple Sun, outrageous. Dwellers Below, once again, a spell I've used a lot, more so with my Lizard Men, but I love it. And then Pit of Shades. Again, like, these killer spells are just incredible. But I've kind of put them to a side because they're so obviously very good spells that I wanted to remove them from, like, my mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I was saying this on another one. Although the massive damage spells are great, I really like the more buffing or hexing spells, because they can just swing an entire unit's abilities either to damage you or to put out damage. So my list is sort of more reflective of that. There is one particular spell in that is quite damaging, but
we're going to have I think in that regard, because I've removed the out-and-out aggressive spells, just because anyone who knows me, as you do, like, knows I'd have to throw 6 dice at those spells and then giggle about it. I've removed those ones from my list to really look at the more like utilitarian all-comer spells that are just never going to see you wrong regardless of who you're playing.
I found that when I was picking them, my choices would change because I've looking at the spell individually, not as part of the lore. So the spells here aren't necessarily from lores that I would always take, which I thought was quite.
The other important thing to really mention when we're talking about like the best spells, if you sort of bracket them that way, is that it's hard to bring a 5 top spells because so much of the magic lore and what spells you pick are so army dependent.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's trying to park, like, say, your high elf bias maybe to one side.
That's going to be impossible.
Spells. Well, yes, because you like to play Crutchhammer.
Oh, this is getting cut out.
Needs to stay in there. It's the best line of the night.
And it's going to the cutting room floor.
Some laws really synergize incredibly well with certain armies and certain sort of special rules, whereas some other armies, like some other spells, don't. And I think when you're just trying to pick a best set of spells, I was trying to think of what spells work. What spells always work, almost regardless of what army you've picked them for.
I did make an effort at that, and I may have failed, but we'll find out. So, do you want to go first, or shall I?
You go as host, and then.
Well, my first one is Wyssan's Wildform, because
now
what?
Well, before you tell us why, I'm just going to go right out there and say we clash immediately. I've also put Withens on there.
Wow. Well, that's because it's a good spell.
It is so.
There's no situation in the game where +1 strength and +1 toughness isn't going to be really useful. And it's a signature spell. So you're getting it on your level 1. You can take a cheap level 1 beast mage and just spam this spell, and you'll get your money's worth.
I totally agree. Exactly mirror what you said. There's not a unit in the game or a point in the game where +1 strength and toughness is going to is not going to come in handy. It's also quite a low cast value, like relatively.
I think it's 10, isn't it? It's one of the higher level signatures, but still not terrible.
Yes, yeah, it's high for a signature, but it's worth the 10 plus to cast. And to increase the range, it only goes up to 13 plus, and to have that flexibility to really impact, I think, the unit that you need to impact. Like, I don't know, if you've got relatively weak unit against a stronger unit, +1 strength and toughness can absolutely swing that combat. Or conversely, if you need to blast through a unit, +1 strength and toughness is absolutely going to assist that. Yeah. It can put off other charges, etc. Like, it just gives you such help to control the game.
And also, if you're putting it on something like if you've charged him with cavalry, it's 1 point easier to cast because it's the lore attribute is if you cast it on a beast or a monster or something, it's 1 easier to cast.
Well, it's not actually. Yeah, you're right. Cavalry, monstrous infantry. Yeah, it's one of those lore attributes that I think sometimes gets forgotten unless you play it a lot, I suppose, to be fair.
Yeah, I always forget about it because I don't generally take beast mages.
I often take the signature spells, like Wandering Deliberations, because what might come to be evident is I absolutely love some of the signature spells. And having Strength and Toughness 5 Saurus Warriors is incredible.
Well, they've just become... Well, in fact, no, they're stronger than Chaos Warriors then, aren't they?
Yeah, they're better than Chaos Warriors, just without the weapon skill.
I don't generally... This is why I was saying I've picked ones that I don't generally take the lore, or I wouldn't generally pick these if I was thinking of the lore in total. But Wissan's Wildform is, I think I'd ran a list, I don't know, about 3 or 4 months ago, and that's all it was. It was a one level one with a dragon, with a prince on star dragon. So all his job was to just all your dice that I've got, just throw it all into Wissan's Wildform, and he might get it off. And then for high elves, that's strength 3, toughness 3 to toughness 4 is quite a big jump, especially when it was elves v elves.
I think this kind of comes back to what we mentioned earlier, that I would never take a level 4 on beasts.
No, the rest,
like, ever. But I would take and that's actually, I say that never, but there is some actually incredibly good spells in beasts, like Savage Beasts. Situationally can be incredible.
the
Curse of Amber, like Flock of Doom, is actually bizarrely good at taking out like chaff. Amber, like, it's a good law, but it's never a law I would invest a level 4 into.
No, I totally agree. And you hoping to roll like Savage Beast and Curse of Anria, and if you don't, you're lumbered with Transformation of Kadon and stuff like that, and that's not as useful. But as a signature spell, it's one of the best of the signatures, I think.
I agree. Many a time I've run a level 1 Beast Mage just for Wissans.
Yeah, I think the only downside is it's pretty short range, and it's if you're running a level 1, it's quite a high casting value. But for the effect,
no, I think a level 2 just gives you that little bit extra. But yeah, when points are tight, yeah. But you're right. The Wissans is such a generally just all round incredible spell. It's got nothing bad about it at all.
what's
other than range?
Yeah,
I'll happily go in there next with one of my favorite 5 spells.
go on.
It's situationally better for some armies than others, but it's not bad for any army, and it can be an absolute game changer. And this is one of my favorite laws, and it's Ockham's Mindrazor from the Shadow law.
The swap your strength with your leadership one.
Well, you just replace. Yeah, you keep your leadership as is, and you replace your strength with your leadership value. I mean, it's just incredible, and it's good for any army, because even if you're replacing strength 3 and you've got leadership 6, you've all of a sudden strength 6, which is incredible. But for certain armies, any of the elves, it's just ridiculous. Now, when I used to Wood Elves, so I was going to say, when I used to run Wood Elves, I always took a level 4 on Shadow. It's just incredible. It synergizes so well. But I often take a Shadow Mage with my Empire and a big block of 40 or 50 Spearmen with an Arc Lector in there, and all of a sudden you've got 50 Strength 9 Human Spearmen. Charges, fill your boots.
That was the build that I took to Graham's tournament in the back end of November.
Yeah. The one I hid from you with COVID.
Yeah, you pretended to have COVID so you didn't have to turn up.
That's it. I absolutely pretended to have COVID to avoid playing you guys.
Well, the idea was it was a block of 50 Spearmen and a level 4 of Shadow, and they had a what do you call them? Anointed of Assyrian in there to give them a ward save to sort of protect them as they go up, immune to psychology. And yeah, it was just roll and hope for Ockham's Mindrazor, get them into combat as soon as possible, and get Mindrazor on them.
What is an incredible run Ockham's as well, just sort of on the sake, because we're talking about elves, but followers of the true Phoenix King, so the Dark Elves.
Whoa.
One incredible way of running Ockham's is small units of approximately 14 Witch Elves, like a proper MSU build. And if you can get one of them on the side, like especially if you can get one of them down the flank, like a unit of 14 Witch Elves, always striking first with Ockham's, putting out 28 attacks, 29 attacks for the champion just from a unit of 14, will, unless I've missed something, but will absolutely just annihilate anything that it touches, unless it's a huge horde.
Well, they're
But
horrible
it's just
without the strength buff. So when they're carving through armor as well, that's
exactly.
horrific.
But I mean, don't get us wrong, Okkam isn't without its sort of challenges. It's an incredibly high cast value at 18 plus basic. It's a high cast, and the ranges, I say only 18 inches, but 18 inches does limit you. And if you boost it to 36 inches, it goes up to a 21 value cast. But I think regardless of that, it's just so good. And unlike Wyssans we've talked about previously, you're normally going to have it on a level 4.
Yeah, you wouldn't try. I wouldn't take Mindrazor for less than level 4 because it's just so high casting value. But I would say the trade-off, if you've got like that unit of spearmen, for example, isn't that expensive. So if you've got that into a combat you absolutely have to win, I think it's even worth sacrificing the level 4 to get the Mindrazor off, even if he does go into the warp.
Yeah, no, it can be a game-changing spell in so many different ways. Like you see, MSU suddenly gives you such a punch that you didn't know, like your opponent doesn't expect. Or like you see, if you've got a horde of spearmen, nothing's charging that spearman, and you then get to dictate where the fight takes you. Like you get to dictate the combats because nothing is going to voluntarily go into 50 spearmen with Mindrazor, especially if they're elves.
The reroll,
because of the always strikes first rule, like
reroll
which is absolutely best.
No, it's not. It's thematic.
But Okkams and Shadow Magic in general synergizes with elves so ridiculously well, and it's what I always ran on my Wood Elves.
I didn't realize how good Shadow was until I started practicing for Graham's tournament, because I'd used it a few times, but then
you're a high elf user, high magic user, normally the
usually I go a high or occasionally life, but Shadow is like all of the spells are, well, bar Steed of Shadow. I hope Steed of Shadows doesn't appear on your list because it's not great.
I can comfortably Steed of Shadows would appear if we ever come back to do the worst 5 spells.
Well, there's an idea. But yeah, I didn't realize just how good it was, and it's reasonably expensive to cast, except the signature, which is super cheap for what it does. But Mindrazor it's not the same as like the other top level spells in that it's not like obliterating a unit itself, but it's actually more useful in a way because if you fail like the initiative test for Purple Sun, for example, there's a chance that they'll pass it all or the unit's initiative's so high that it's not going to affect it. There's no situation where strength 8, strength 9 unit in combat isn't just going to chew through whatever's in front of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I put it there, to be honest. It might as well be a killer spell for how good it is.
It is a pseudo killer spell, I think, because everyone looks at Pit of Shades, which is the initiative test or die template one, as the killer spell at Shadow.
As an elf player, I kind of don't care if you cast Pit of Shades at us.
Yeah,
whereas conversely, as a man player, I detest anyone who rolls Pit of Shades for their spells.
And then they FAQ'd it because as it's written, it says when rolling to wound, you use the leadership as their strength, and then the FAQ'd it say no, that counts for the armor saves as well. So
yes.
Leadership 7, most things like the average leadership, most things aren't getting an armor save with -4, and then it does count for inspiring presence. So you're talking about leadership 9 if you're in the general's range at the least, and nothing's getting it. Steam tanks, Empire Knights, Chaos Knights, nothing's getting them. Nothing's surviving that.
It's incredible, and Shadow's the type of law I only take on a level 4 because of their cast values. It's never a spell, a law rather, that I would ever take on anything other than a top levels caster.
No, I agree there. Didn't we play ages ago where I managed to get Mindrazor off in like the last turn where you charged me like 2 Doom Bulls or something, and I got it off on.
Yeah, it was outrageous.
Yeah, I got it off on a unit of Phoenix Guard, and I think the mage died, but they went from about to lose to actually winning.
Yeah, it was not okay.
That's
But it is a game changer.
well, yeah.
And that's exactly why it would make my top 5 for any army, essentially.
that sort of proves your point in that I was losing and then wasn't just by that
Yeah.
spell. I think there's some agreement there on that one.
Did that make top 5 or did it not?
It's not on my top
And if it did,
5, but there is something else of the Lower Shadow on my top 5, which I'll come to now. Actually, the Withering.
oh, what a spell!
It's almost like having Mindrazor, just you don't get the armor cracking ability, but just reducing people's toughness by D3 is phenomenal. And this is again when I was practicing for Graham's tournament, and I was rolling these spells which I'd never really used that much. And then when you're realizing that most things are toughness 3, so you're taking them down to 2 or toughness 1, you're wounding them on 2s with standard strength 3 infantry or shooting. That's where I've noticed the biggest.
The Withering is essentially why I always took a level 4 Shadow Mage with my Wood Elves. So I had an army of essentially True Flight arrows, 60 to 80 shots, always hitting on 3s. If you can take a unit's toughness down by D3, you can delete a unit a turn comfortably.
The build I took for Graham's tournament is that I have 30 archers now, and that was with the idea of this to wither something down and then just shoot it with strength 3 shots. Because if you're running on 2s, you're gonna, even if it's 1-up armor saves, they're gonna fail a fair amount of them.
Yeah, you throw enough dice at something, you roll enough ones.
Yeah, it's more expensive than its related spell, Enfeebling Foe. It's 13 to cast, but again, like you're saying, you would only take a level 4 with Lower Shadow, or at least I would. So you only need to roll a 9.
Yeah, and the difference between Enfeebling Foe versus Withering is that even if you take a unit strength down by D3, they can still wound on 6s or 5s depending on what they are. Whereas the Withering affects every level of the game as well. Like you say, whether it's combat or whether it's shooting, like it's such a buff.
Yeah.
I must admit, it didn't make my top 5, but it comfortably could. It's a very, very good spell.
And it's a remains in play, so if you want rid of it, you're going to have to expend dice in your magic phase to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Which means you're not going to get off your spells that you want. So I think I like Mindrazor, and it's very good, but I really, really like the Withering. Because even if you bring it down, you're bringing down, like, if you targeted monsters, for example, toughness 6, toughness 5 monsters, you can get that down to a toughness 3. You can start pinging off monsters with trash or archers or whatever. Or conversely, if you're bringing down units toughness, they just make them.
I don't disagree at all, because in all honesty, I'd kind of, as almost a summary point while we're chatting, as part of me prep, I'd made a bit of a note of which laws for an all-comers list I would suggest as some of the best as a follow-on from what we've chatted about. And one of those laws is Shadow. It's just such an incredible law and so versatile.
The only downside to Shadow is the unit law attribute I've never used.
No, it's terrible.
You can just swap.
I've seen it used once well, and it led to that you thought you were going to have a relatively easy kill on a wizard, then all of a sudden you've got a blender lord, and you're like, oh, that is not what I expected to have to deal with. But you're talking about once in a blue moon opportunity. It is probably the worst law attribute.
I've heard of that being possible, that you just you charge the mage and then swap them with the horrendous lord, but I've never seen it done. And I wouldn't even think about it.
Seen something similar done once and once only.
And what's the so you can that's the downside of the Withering. It's 18-inch range.
Yeah, but you can boost it to 36. But again, it goes up to 16 to cast. But for a level 4 mage,
that's not so bad.
You can risk 3 dice in it, or you can comfortably throw 4 dice at it and be confident of getting it off.
Because really, you want the Shadow Mage nowhere near any combat. Or at least I wasn't putting them anywhere near combat. I was keeping them with the archers.
Yeah, you want them bunkered in your ranged units normally. Should I go on to another one?
Yeah, what is your next one?
This one, to be honest, I think you could argue that there's definitely better, like personally, I think even for myself, you could probably argue there's better spells out there. But this spell has a special place in my heart, so it's always going to make my list, which is the Enchanted Blades of Aiban from the Law of Metal.
I think we're going to agree on everything here, because that is a phenomenal spell.
I love this spell. Now, a lot of it comes from the fact that I've spent a lot of time playing Empire, and Enchanted Blades of Aiban on a Hellblaster is a sight to behold. It's a glorious, glorious sight that everybody should just take a moment to appreciate.
Is that with the engineer you'd be hitting on 2s?
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yes, it is. But no, like +1 to hit with shooting or close combat is just always, always, always good. But the other thing that I think a lot of people forget with blades is that it gives your armor piercing, but also it makes your combat and shooting attacks magical.
Yes.
So the Law of Metal is not good for being able to deal with, say, ethereal, like hex wraiths, etc. But all of a sudden you put Blades of Aiban on a unit of archers or crossbowmen or whatever, and all of a sudden you can take out that unit of ethereal creatures like relatively easily. You can hit them quite easily. They've got low toughness, and it just gives you so many options. And it's an easy cast spell on a 9+ as well. The range is good.
Cheap.
It is just such a good spell.
24-inch range, which you can boost to 48, and then that's only a 12 to cast.
Yeah.
So really, you can hit. There's
anything.
Not going to be much, out of a 48-inch range.
With the killer spells, I just think it's one of the most utilitarian spells in the game that works for almost any army that can take it. Some armies obviously it has better synergy, but I think it's useful for anyone.
It's similar to the Withering, though, isn't it? Because you can get use out of it in 2 phases.
Yeah.
So you can shoot. It's useful in the shooting and the combat phase.
That's it, and that's what gives it an edge over other spells for me. It's the dual use out of it. It gives your opponent a concern in multiple phases, which gives them that quandary whether they dispel it or hold their dispel dice for other spells. You're going to get use out of it, and you can get use out of multiple phases. So it gives you additional threat. So if you are, say, you're a level 4 on metal and you throw a few dice at Blades of Aiban, like your opponent could have to let that slip because they're holding back because you're possibly going to throw 6 dice or whatever at final transmutation. Yes. It's just one of those spells that is just so good.
I know for you with saying you've looked at it as an all-comers list, but for high elves, this is an amazing spell. You're either hitting on 2s, re-rolling, usually like Phoenix Guard and stuff, and then making them armor piercing. But even on the great weapons, like the sword masters for that, hitting on 2s, 2 attacks each, that makes them phenomenally good. And then if it's on not Phoenix Guard, White Lions, they're now AP -4.
Yeah, so, it's just incredible. And I use some of that with obviously I predominantly use metal with Empire. Like for the shooting, it's incredible. But you get a charge off with your knights, and you want that extra level of reliability. All of a sudden, instead of hitting on say 4s or 3s, you're hitting on 3s or 2s. Like the difference is incredible.
Yeah, it's like any elite infantry. Well, any infantry really. The difference between hitting on 4 or 3s instead of 4s, and then your armor piercing and magical attack again. So even if you're just putting it on your core, if it's core v core,
I mean, just to take away from Empire, so another army I've used it with is Lizardmen. You know, you've got a block of Saurus with only weapon skill 3, but good strength and toughness of 4. You put this on them, all of a sudden, instead of hitting most things on 4s, you're hitting them on 3s. Because it's not a modification of the weapon skill, but the to-hit roll. So you're hitting on 3s, you've already got strength 4, so you're hitting on 3s with a -2 to someone's armor, which just turns a block of Saurus into something that's like a genuine threat to almost anything in the game.
That's definitely, especially with combat, because of the way the weapon skill system works, is you can't hit on better than a 3, no matter how much you improve the weapon skill. It's like what's it called? So Hand of Glory. No matter how much plus weapon skill you get, you're going to be hitting on 3s, but this can get you to hit on 2s quite easily.
Yeah. I think that's where it has that edge for me. I just think it's such a good spell. Like you say, it in an all-comers list, a spell that works for almost every army in multiple different scenarios. I just think Blades of Aiban is incredible, and it's so easy to cast as well.
It's cheap as well, isn't it? It's casting a 9.
Yeah, really cheap.
I definitely agree with that. Metal shifting, the low attribute that doesn't come in from Enchanted Blades. So
No,
again,
no,
that's
it's weird. On a side note, the law of metal is is a very bizarre law where the low attribute actually makes one of your most damaging spells, i.e., Searing Doom, worse.
yeah. If you are totally unarmored, you cannot be injured by Searing Doom.
Yeah, but the metal shifter makes their armor save worse, and the thing about metal is that it destroys armor saves. Like any army with an armor save is just like mincemeat to metal mages. But their own bloody low attribute makes their own casts worse, which is just crazy.
I like metal. It's
As you well know, in my love of Gelt,
oh yeah, that game.
I love. I mean, I quite often take a level. I used to take metal quite often with my Zenith demon list because it plugs a lot of the holes that demons have. I'd quite often take a level 2 Herald of Zenith on a disc with Law of Metal because you're guaranteed to at least get Searing Doom. And one of the things that demons often suffer with is their inability to deal with high armor saves.
And metal just cuts straight through it.
And just, yeah, you know, I've once 6-diced, obviously, empowered Doom for 2d6 hits on a Chaos Knight bus with a Blender Chaos Lord in, killed the entire unit of Chaos Knights. Like the guy I was playing was less than impressed, because I thought it was hilarious.
Super aggressive nature coming out again.
Yeah, I mean, I just literally flew 20 inches up the board and then shot his bus turn 1.
Well, you did the same thing with Final Chance on that block of Phoenix Guard. Now I'm thinking back to it when we played.
Yeah.
When you used Gelt. So yeah, I'm actually getting some negative flashbacks now about the lower metal.
Good times. But yeah, metal, I actually think metal's a fair, on a side note, because I know we're talking about specific spells, I think metal's quite an undervalued law, personally.
I like metal. There's only like Golden Hounds, which I think is a bit iffy.
Yeah, it's rubbish because you still get your lookout sir for it as well.
If
you didn't get that, it would actually be alright, but with it, it's just terrible. Glittering Robe's not great either, but
I don't know, plus Scaly Skin +5. That's like, again. I'm thinking I'm thinking about it for high elves because that's like, your infantry can go from a
everywhere.
Yeah, Empire it's not so much, but high elves are quite relatively lightly armored.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing I've taken on as well is Lizardmen, which already come with a scaly skin for the most part, so it's not a huge buff.
It doesn't stack.
No, because you've already got scaly skin.
Oh, yeah,
so you
that's
can only
right. Yeah.
What about your third spell?
My third spell is Harmonic Convergence from
Oh, heavens.
one of the weaker laws, I think, Heavens.
Oh, do you say that?
What?
As in, sorry, before you tell us why you love Harmonic Convergence, I know multiple people, very good players, who rate Heavens as one of the best laws in the game.
Really?
Yeah, and to be honest, in a lot of ways, I agree. And one of my other spells that I wave throughout there is on there.
Oh,
But I think Heavens helps control the game, which I think is why a lot of the players I'm talking about in question really like it, because between a lot of the spells in Heavens let you control the board. And if you are, say, a Bretonnian army, for example, you dictating movement and dictating matchups can be an absolute game changer. And I think Heavens lets you do that quite a lot.
well, I think it's a fair point. I just think again, it's like the buffing and hexing things in Heavens are really good. And because the one I'm taking to Stockton, I thought at the start I'll take a Life Mage just for it's a generic, and I thought no, I'll try something different. And I tried Heavens, and I was getting Harmonic Convergence cast on the unit of White Lions I've got, which it really works on them because they can't re-roll to hit, but now they can. They can re-roll ones. So Harmonic Convergence is you can re-roll all to hit, to wound, and armor save rolls of 1. So usually they'll be hitting on 3s, but they can't re-roll because they've got great weapons. But now they can re-roll 1s. They'll usually be wounding on 2s, so any fails get instantly re-rolled, which means they're likely to dish out a load of wounds.
They essentially become Dark Elves, don't they, with
Yeah.
the murderous prowess?
Yeah, it's murderous prowess, and then the armor save one. That's just a nice extra. But
No, and I think the other thing we've mentioned a couple of times, it's in what actually all of has got going for it. It's such a low casting value.
it casted a 6.
So yeah, so you see, if you've got a level 2 of Heavens, you're only casting it on 4s. It's nothing. It's so easy to throw dice at, and again, it forces your opponent to think, where do I use my dispel dice? Because if you're say you've got a level 4 in most lists, and you've got a real threatening spell, if you're maybe you see you've got 7 or 8 casting dice versus 5 dispel dice, and you just throw a couple of dice at Harmonic Convergence and get it off, your opponent then genuinely has to question how many of his dispel dice the sacrifice to stop Convergence. And I think that's another strength of that spell. I mean, it hasn't made it into my top 5, but I definitely think it is a strength of that spell and Heavens in general.
I'm biased because I usually run or almost exclusively run High Elves, so I'm always thinking of the filter of how this helps High Elves.
I actually think High Elves, you're right, and certainly with the good old White Lion Horde, or even Swords Masters or Knights, it's incredible. Like that re-rolling of a 1, which is what you see, you're only missing on a 1 or a 2 anyway for the most part.
And then usually even Swordmasters, they're strength 5, so most things will be wounded on 2s anyway, possibly 3s.
Yeah.
So that reroll 1, it just the amount of extra combat res you're generating.
For
it
only
didn't
make
6.
it into my top 5, but I definitely think it's got legs as a spell, and it's part of a lore that I would actually put right up there in the top tier of laws.
Well, that's interesting because I've never really been too impressed with Heavens.
Well, next time we play, well, not next time, but when I play Lizardmen again in the future, remind us to take Teto Echo, who's Lawmaster Heavens, and I'll show you how good Heavens can be.
All right, deal. I will post pictures of that for the end result. But the Harmonic Convergence, you can target every friendly unit within 12, and that's only 12 to cast.
Yes. Which is incredible. Especially if you're a tightly toxic block army is just so good.
I've never actually cast it like that, and I'm just reading it now thinking, hang on, so this this doesn't say in combat only.
No.
So
So it also comes to as again, if I was to say take a because I've often run Heavens with me lizard men, blocks of multiple skink clouds, which I know many listeners might think that is absolutely disgusting. What sort of arsehole takes a skink cloud this type? Okay, so
brazen.
multiple skink clouds. Like, let's be honest, really efficient for the sixes anyway for poison. So the chances of that one, if you've got sort of 3 different units of say 10 around you, for the sake of a 12 plus, is worth a cast. To be honest.
Yeah, because I agree. Because if you're hitting all that, then all those units are getting the rerolls. That could turn horrendous. This is what I'm hoping to. I'm hoping to draw that at Stockton. I've rolled it one. This is the problem with taking the level 2 because I think the different laws work better at different levels. If that makes any sense. So like but the downside is you just having to trust to luck that you're going to roll the spells that you want. Whereas a level 4, you're more likely to get what you want.
For anyone listen who might not go to Stockton, you also can't take a lord to that in that comp, so you are limited to a level 2 wizard.
Yeah, so that's made it more interesting, which is why I'm trying different laws in different ways. Because normally you build a high elf list and you just automatically start with the archmage. And you build the army around that. But I can't do that this time. So this is why coming up against I think I've used Heavens a few times in the past, but when I was playing Graham actually as a practice game, and I've got Harmonic Convergence off on the White Lions. Like this, why have I never been casting this before? This is a massive increase in their damage output because they don't fail to wound. Then one, get rid of that,
Yeah.
roll that again.
The thing is, and like if it's sort of a vessel side segue, this is why I think Heavens is such a good law, because Harmonic Convergence is excellent. Ice Shard Blizzard is arguably one of the best debuffing signatures in the game. Comet of Cassandora is like it's not a killer spell, but it can dictate movement so powerfully. Wind Blast can be annoying. Curse the Midnight Wind can be quite a nasty little debuff, and then like Thunderbolt's decent, and Chain Lightning against a castle dwarf list or empire list can be game changing. And again, the whole law gives you control of the board, which is why I think it's such an all round good law with relatively low cast values across the board, which is why I think a level 4 it's a great law for level 2, but I think it's also a good law at a level 4 as well.
I just noticed how cheap the casting is though for all this. So
That's why Heavens is incredible. So underrated.
you might be persuading me that I'm wrong to assess Heavens as one of the weakest laws.
Well, if I take away death, which is clearly one of the most powerful spells for just dominating the laws for dominating a game, and then if I also kind of take away life, because where death dominates a game, life can be is obviously the most defensive law plus dwellers.
Yeah, it's got
If
it
I
all
take away
really.
those two, and then you've got sort of the remaining laws, I personally think the best collective laws are Shadow and Heavens as the next two. If we're going to tier the laws of magic, I think life and death are the probably overall two best. Then I think it's Shadow and Heavens, and then I think you can have the rest of them are arguable relative to what army you're taking, and as an all-comers list, that is.
No, I'm quite prepared occasionally, sometimes to be wrong.
You
Occasionally,
just throw it in there as a potential, though, yeah.
yeah, it's let's not go crazy here, but anyway, yeah. So Harmonic Convergence is my third top spell.
So, like I said, because I've veered away from a lot of the big killer spells, and because they're so obviously very good. The other one I thought I'd throw in there is funny enough, also from the Law of Heavens, which is Ice Shard Blizzard.
I could have predicted that because I was tied between that and Harmonic Convergence.
Yeah, it's the other side, isn't it? But it's such a good hex. So it's 24 range at a 7+, or 48 range at a 10+. And it's -1 to hit for combat and shooting, but also potentially more importantly, or just as importantly, it's -1 to leadership as well. But also, if you don't require a ballistic skill to shoot, for example, a cannon, you need to roll a 4 up to cast. So it just puts that another element of doubt in whether that cannon's going to take off your monster before your monster starts getting really aggressive. And I just think, again, it's so easy to cast. It lets you dominate a phase of your opponent's turn. Or certainly, if not dominate, then dictate what they're doing. And it will draw out the spell dice because it's just too good. Like that -1 is huge. You see, your high elves, you're normally hitting on 3s. All of a sudden, you're hitting on 4s. That is going to cut down your to hit that volume a lot. Less so with your ones that always like re-roll, but say your White Lions.
Yeah.
You rely on doing all that damage in turn 1.
Suddenly you're missing half.
Suddenly you're missing half your rolls. Like my block of Empire Spearmen are going to take a lot less damage to actually stick around.
It's almost it is like the opposite of Enchanted Blades.
Yeah, it's that's it. It's exactly the opposite, and it's arguably just as good.
This is why I took the level 2 on Heavens, because I think of all the signatures at that points level, it's the most.
Ice Shard Blizzard is so good.
Yeah, it's the most useful. It's got the range of 48 is. I mean, it's boosted at 10.
You put -1 LD on them. You charge something with a Terracosan monster, for example, and all of a sudden that unit could be gone off the board, or certainly fleeing, which lets you then. Yeah, you've almost won the movement phase, which I think for anyone who plays Warhammer to a relatively competitive level is the most important phase to dominate. If you can dominate movement, you've essentially won the game.
And it's something you've got for a cheap signature spell. I would say you have to dispel this if you think you're going to get into combat.
Yep, agreed.
Which you already will be in because the charge has already happened.
Yeah, so there's no real negatives to Ice Shard Blizzard. It's just such a good signature spell, and I suppose it goes back to what we said literally before. If you're saying Convergence is one of the top 5, and I wasn't particularly arguing, although it's not my list, I'm saying Ice Shard's one of the top 5. You're not arguing,
no,
even though it's on your list. We're saying 2 out of their 7 spells make it into the top 5 potentially, which is why Heavens is such a good all-round lore.
Why you're turning me round on Heavens?
I say that, and other than certain armies, I very rarely take a high Heavens, but it was one of those high caster Heavens. But I used to really enjoy a cheeky level 2 with my Lizard Men on Heavens.
That's what I've settled on this arm. Can I say that? Yeah, this will have gone out by then. This is what I built the army around, because originally I was just chucking in life, but the amount of things you can roll, like Earthblood's not particularly useful to a bunkered mage in archers.
Throne of Vines, although an incredible spell, is only incredible on level 4.
Yeah,
it's an absolute waste of the spell on level 2.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So then that's where I started experimenting and ended up on Heavens. And it was just to get this signature. The rest, whatever you roll elsewhere, is just a nice bonus. So, like when I was thinking of the army, I was thinking whatever you need to pick a lore where whatever you roll, you can just default to the signature, and that's going to help you all the way through the.
Level 2, that is so important.
Yeah, and it's so cheap. Again, cheap spell.
Aye. So yeah, your 4th spell?
Yeah, so my 4th spell is I've gone a bit rogue here, and I have gone for Drain Magic from the Law of High.
Oh, I'm not engaging with you about High Magic.
You can't avoid it. It's a very, very good law.
I can't avoid it because 2 out of 3 people play high elves in the meta.
Yeah, but so you need to know about it to know what it does. Drain magic I love because you can, as a player, you can start stacking the buffs. I've put enchanted blades on. I've started putting this buff your armor save, whatever. And then in the next turn, the high elf player can go, all that is now dispelled. And you go, no, this isn't remains in play. No, it does not matter. Get that off the units. And I just love that as or Conti, I've just spent all my magic turn trying to negate stuff on your unit and make it weaker. I've just cast a Withering. I've stripped all the strength off it. And then the high elf plate and go, right, drain magic, all that's gone. And if that wasn't good enough, for doing that, you get +1 ward save to your mage's unit.
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, I agree. It's a good spell. It's a good spell. There's no doubt in it.
And it's a signature.
Well, yeah, because I mean, obviously, high elves cheat and have 2 signatures, just like they cheat with everything else.
You're either masters of magic or you're not. You know, you can teach these chimps in the Empire a couple of cheap tricks, but
high elves were taught from the true masters of magic, the Slan. So in that regard, you're right.
And then the Slan could do nothing about the invasion of chaos, so the high elves had to surpass their masters and invent the vortex.
We were happy for chaos to come because they would have just beat them back.
The only way they could beat them back is by creating a nuclear detonation from their chief Slan mage priests.
They're okay with it.
Croak style. I'll give him. He's got class.
Got a subspecies to do that for them in the elves.
I wonder where the elves got their arrogance from. If that's who this the attitude of people who are teaching them.
Bravo! I like that. Well said.
Drain magic. Yes. So it's cheap. It's quite almost trolling in what it can do. And where are we? Let me just get the page up in the book, which I always have everything. It casts on a 7, and if you're casting high as a high mage, you're +1 to whatever your level is anyway, because you're casting high magic. So I would never take high usually. I'd usually take it on level 4. So you can't cast on a 2 because that's a fail. As long as you don't roll a 2, that's going off. So it's really, really cheap to cast. And the other benefit of Drain Magic is, because it's one of those utility, it can be a hex or an augment depending on whatever you're casting it at. You don't have to have anything to drain off it. The rules don't require a spell to be active to cast it on something.
No, it's just another bit of broken high elf magic where you can just add. It's essentially +1 ward save.
Yeah, so you can cast it for nothing, and that's a good thing. You know, you talked about how you putting pressure on your opponent to use their dispel dice, which usually they'll have nowhere near as many as you've got casting dice if you've rolled well. So it's forcing that decision. Do I try to dispel this? I mean, it's going to be quite high. It's usually going to be quite high at cast because level 4 is already +5 to whatever they roll on the dice. So you chuck 2 dice at it. What, you're going to roll a 7 on average. So what's that? 12. Are you going to really sacrifice some of your dice to stop a cast on a 12 for something that's admittedly the high elf player will be going, it's not going to do anything, it's just going to be increasing my ward save. Do you want to deal with that later in the game? And I love spells like that sort of force, even if it does nothing for me as the high elf player, the low attribute's going to do something for me. So you're really spending dice to stop a low attribute.
The thing is, the other thing is, if you aren't going to engage that unit, or you're not going to engage it that turn, you can just let it go because they're going to have to reapply said ward.
Yeah, that's true. But then,
I'm not arguing that actually Drain Magic is a very, very good spell.
Drain Magic it's a good spell in what it does, and it's a good spell in that if you've got nothing to target, if you've got nothing to do, you've got nothing to target at, it's also good. I don't think there's quite another spell like that that I can think of, where it doesn't actually matter if it has any effect.
to be honest, like, aside from the trolling with high elves and etc., but I think it's a bit to do with the poorly written way you can use it without targeting anything, which I think is probably not how it was essentially intended.
Well, tough. They're not going to write an FAQ now, are they?
Not going to write an FAQ. That is absolutely true.
The flip side to Drain Magic is, and you can make this mistake, you stack a lot of buffs on a unit and think, I'll just buff, and then you cast on yourself and take them all off, which has been done. And that makes you feel like a right idiot. Just got Hand of Glory, all that on them, and I'll take it all off again.
You're right. It's one of those things, double-edged sword, but it's a good spell. I don't think it's right top tier personally, but it does have a lot of value for a high elf player. I can certainly agree with that.
The thing about high magic, and I know we're not talking about laws specifically, but high magic, because it's got so much choice, and most of the spells are really good, and both the signatures are really good. So when you're rolling, I find it. This is why I take forever to pick spells, because like, is there something here that I'm going to use? I'm going to get more use out of than Soul Quench and Drain Magic.
But I suppose that's away from spells themselves and more laws.
Yeah, that's more attributes, but I don't. It's very difficult to separate the spells from the bigger lore.
Yeah, no, you're right, because they normally become part of the wider. That's why I suppose right at the start we're talking about how you can't always just talk about the best 5 spells just by themselves without taking into context either the army that's using them, the scenario, or the lore itself, because you're right, they're so intrinsically linked. You can't talk about Drain Magic without talking about how it interacts with the rest of your high magic, because you won't ever have one without the other.
But I like Drain Magic as well for sort of more fluff reasons, in that it's sort of a mini vortex. So like it's a signature spell for high magic, so that means high mages can just create mini vortexes and drain the magic from the battlefield. That's just something that they can do, which I like that it's sort of a mini version of Kalador's vortex spell.
Yeah, I think bringing up the whole concept of fluff and laws is really worthwhile talking about as well, because it's one of the reasons I take metal, beyond the fact that I love the lore, with me Empire quite a lot, because I think it's just thematically right.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Patriarch is a metal mage, so
in this edition, obviously historically he was a fire mage.
Fire, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, apologies if that's pronounced wrong, but yes. Who was also cool, but yeah, I just think you're right. It's to talk about some spells, you've got to talk about the lore, and a lot of laws inherently go well with specific armies, or more importantly, the armies you play a lot. So with your good self, you play a lot of, well, almost universally high elves. So naturally, it's hard for you to take your spectrum or prism of high elf viewpoint away whilst talking about the other laws.
Yeah,
because you really deal with how they interact from high elves or against high elves,
and you also feel like
it's relevant because you really couldn't care less that you've got to make initiative tests, for example.
Yeah, whereas, it's not a big thing for initiative 5 elves.
Dwellers, goodbye elves.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Yeah, and
it deletes your ward saves.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons when we started talking about the best 5, I purposely avoided the killer spells for that reason, because obviously they're some of the best spells in the game. Like they're the killer spells. They're the spells of the game.
And I'm invested in high magic because it's the lore that I think they would use. Well, they do use, but I have to make a big conscientious decision to say I'm not going to take high magic because it just fits with taking high elves. And I know there's like Shadow works really good with them. But like specifically getting back to Drain Magic, I was going to make another point. What was it? Oh yeah, it sort of benefits you in your when you are, it's not your magic turn, and you're getting your magic phase, and you're getting your units blasted or targeted with debuffered and hex spells, because you can sort of say, I'll accept this hex being cast on this unit because there's a good chance I can get rid of it with drain magic in the next turn. So you can preserve your dice for, say, dwellers or something like that. You can save them
Yeah.
on the reasonable assumption that you might be able to get drain magic off the next turn. So it almost sort of it works in your casting phase, but it also works in your dispel when you're dispelling things.
No, I totally agree. It gives you that when we talk about how many different phases can you impact with a spell, and I think
Yeah,
that's one of the both spoke about quite a lot with what spells are like in speech marks the best. It's a lot of them are the spells that impact or allow you to impact multiple phases.
yeah,
Indirect magic allows you to do that.
you're getting
You can
something
still
out of it
like
in a lot of phases.
yeah, like go on, have Okkams. You're only gonna have like I'm gonna take it off you potentially before you use it, or your opponent might put Okkams on one of their units to stop you charging them. You
And then
might
you just
charge them in the
yeah,
hope that you're going to draw Occams off them.
and then you would six
Uh,
dice it.
yeah, well, that or you draw out their other dispel dice, then all of a sudden you just throw 2 dice at drain magic, and your opponent's like, like I did not see that coming because it's because it's a buff, and once it's off until it's not off.
And the other thing at Drain Magic is the overcast version. I think it just takes everything off in a 12-inch bubble. Where are we?
Yeah,
Oh no, everything within 18. It drains all the spells off it, and that's on a 14. And I can imagine situations where that would be if you just want to even the playing field, and high elf elite infantry are usually going to, all things being even, they'll probably have the edge. So if you just want to reset everything, 18-inch bubble of everything comes off, and you've reset the playing field. I've never done that, but that's just something I'm thinking of when I'm reading through the rules.
yeah,
Because usually a high mage will go in, they won't be at the back. So it's all mid range, and the low attribute means they'll probably be in like a unit of Phoenix Guard or something. So you are likely to be in the middle of the fighting, where an 18-inch bubble of ripping everything off will actually be practical.
yeah. Nah, totally agree.
Yeah, every time a high elves come off, I just get very animated.
No, savage.
Yeah, well,
Before I got to my last spell, can I just throw out a couple of sort of worthy mentions that
yeah, fire
I'd love to
away.
put in there? They're a bit more army dependent.
Hang on, last. I've just done 4, haven't I?
Yeah, but my first one was the same as your first one.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. I'll cut this out.
Damn Wissans. No, I'll leave it in. People need to know Wissans is incredible.
So we'll re-mention Wissans because it is very,
Wissans,
very good.
God. But I just want to throw a couple of like notable shout outs to many of the Law of Death spells because they're all, frankly, some of them are just outrageous.
I avoid Law of Death because there's not really
There's not
bar
really
one. There's not
there's
really a bad
yeah,
one in it.
no. And Spirit Leech is just one of the best signatures. But if you're an Empire wizard and you've only got LD7, like it can still be game changing because you can always roll a 6 and your opponent can always roll a 1. But it's not as powerful as, say, a Chaos Dwarf sorcerer who's got minimum LD9, if not LD10. Like all of a sudden, that Spirit Leech is so much better.
So
Which is
Spirit
why,
Leech, if anyone who I don't know why anyone
if
who
anyone's got an
doesn't want
incredible
launch
LD
fantasy.
Leech, is just incredible. Like it's just incredible. I'll quite often run a level, not often, but if I was to run a vampire in my vampire army, stand on foot in a block, in said same unit would be a level 1 death wizard just for sniping with Spirit Leech. Because it uses the unmodified LD, which would be your vampire's LD10, and you just start picking out characters like it's going out of fashion.
It's very, very good. And for casting on a 7, the
It's
only
ridiculous.
thing is it's a 12-inch range, but who cares?
You boost it 10 up for
Yeah,
a
10.
24-inch.
Yeah,
You start sniping across the board.
Um,
But I didn't put it in there as much as I love Spirit Leech, and just thinking about some of the snipes makes us genuinely smile. But it got a notable mention just because I was avoiding death because it's such a good lore altogether.
if we're mentioning death, I would go for Fate of Buna, because it's the most. You just feel helpless when that comes off. Like
The only thing
character's
that
about
holds
to
you back
die.
with that, it's only a 12-inch range. It cannot be boosted.
Good.
And obviously you then need to roll 2-ups to then wound. Don't get us wrong, it's an incredible spell, as all of the death magic is mainly. But it's a 12-inch range, it's 2d6 minus toughness. You then roll on a 2-up. And I think what some people forget about is that if you miraculously live through that, you're then stupid for the rest of the game as well.
Yeah, that's awful. But being an elf player, all of my characters are maximum toughness 3. So
Exactly that. Whereas, I mean, don't get us wrong, there's no characters in the game who happily take 2d6 minus toughness.
no.
Because I'm trying, like, even Kolek, which I think is probably the toughest character in the game, I think he's toughness 7 without looking at a book. Like, even him is going to could potentially take a serious amount of damage. So if you think your standard character has got toughness better than an elf, but not by a lot, even 4 or 5, you're at least taking probably 2 wounds with no armor save. So you're relying on your ward to save you.
And because there's so many, like,
Yeah,
those
it's
one,
a relatively high cast.
Yeah, it's 13.
13 with a small range. But I can't deny, like, Fate of Buna is incredible, as are so many of the death spells. Like, I think Buna over Caress of Laneth, it's just better. Like, Spirit Leech, I think, collectively overall for its additional range, easier to cast value is better. Purple Sun's obviously outrageous.
You don't even have to mention Purple Sun.
Human Darkness is incredible. So, obviously, we're both attending Stockton. Like, my level 2 is on death.
I was seriously thinking about death.
It's Chaos Dwarf, LD9. So,
right.
Spirit Leech. And then it doesn't matter what two spells I roll. Like, there isn't 2 bad spells in death anyway. Like, it's just
no.
As far as aggressive laws go, and you know I love playing Warhammer in an aggressive manner. Like, death's just the most aggressive school of magic. It's incredible.
I have this thought of putting a death mage on a star dragon, and just
as far as sort of triple comps etc. go, what you want to do is throw a level 1 death wizard on a flying carpet, and then just go flying around sniping people.
I have heard of that.
That's horrible. It'll be 2. If you're only level 1 or 2 on a flying carpet, you're also +1 to a triple crown comp. Admittedly, you can die horribly because you can get shot, but some of the tricks you can play, incredible. I love it. Another, just a very quick shout out to Comet of Cassandora. We've already spoke about it. I just think it's hilarious that you can cast it and then keep casting it, and all of a sudden multiple comets can just start crashing down, and so I think thematically it's hilarious. But in the right hands or versus the right opponent, which is why it didn't quite make me top 5. Like, it's incredible. Like, if you've got a dwarf castle, you're against a dwarf castle list. You place a comet or 2 of Comet of Cassandora down. Like, that dwarf castle takes a serious beating. Now, it's only strength 4 to base, but obviously every turn it doesn't come down, it gets stronger and stronger. Like, that castle dwarf has to make the choice or the Castle Empire or the Castle Chaos Dwarf, etc., has to make that choice. Do they break their own castle, or do they potentially take a lot of damage?
Yeah, because
And
it's +1 strength, and it does increase the range every time it doesn't come down.
Yeah, and it's a number of hits as well.
Yeah, 2d6 hits +1 hit for each marker on the comment at a strength equal to 4 plus another markers on the comment.
Yeah. So it can be incredible, and the reason I love it is the same reason I love some of the other spells that we've already spoken about, is that it allows you to really impact your opponent and what they're doing. So it's not just the raw damage of death that we're just talking about, which is obviously hilarious and can obviously win you games. This is a more subtle way of winning your games, because what it does is it assists you in what you're already doing, if that makes sense. It forces your opponent to think differently, whereas death is it is what it is. It's just a brutal instrument. I think things like Cassandora or Heavens in general is a much more subtle way of using magic to impact the game.
It's certainly like area denial, isn't it? This dwarf army or whatever, it now has to move or it's going to get obliterated.
Yeah, and even taking away that, even if you're talking about an MSU Dark Elf list, for example, or an MSU Wood Elf list, you put Cassandora down, you're denying that MSU avoidance list a bit of the board, because they're elves, so they're only toughness 3, so they're going to take a beating, and it allows you to pin them into a bit more of the board or risk death that you want to engage them with, and that impacting their movement leads to you potentially winning the game, because movement is just such an important part of the game, which I think gets overlooked. The importance of movement is the difference between, I think, like the premium or the better Warhammer players and those who aren't.
I'm destined to be mid-table for the rest of my Warhammer career.
Well, as obviously goes without saying, that is absolutely worth throwing 6 dice at. I love it. I love it so much.
No ward save.
My experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Strength test or die, no saves of any kind. Pretty straightforward.
It's a high cast. It's a relatively short range, but couldn't talk about the best spells in the game without at least giving a shout out to Dwellers, because it's incredible.
The horrible thing about Dwellers is, for just 3 more to cast, it's got a 24-inch range.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you say 18, but really you're looking at the 24-inch version. So you're talking 21 to cast.
If you're going to roll, if you're going to roll for an 18, you might as well roll for the 21.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about those killer spells, that can be a game changer. It's worth throwing 6 dice at. Couldn't talk about magic without throwing, like, it potentially made my top 5, but then it didn't, because you can almost get the same thing from a 25-point magic item. Like, I almost put Fireball in there, because there's very few games that Fireball isn't good. It's never going to break the game or change the game for you. Like, it's not going to win you a game, but it could definitely stop you losing a game, and it's always, always, always useful.
It's that clearing anything, I've got nothing for this, like hex rays, anything ethereal.
Yeah.
Fireball,
the amount of times my to Fireball's just frankly upsetting.
And it's got the 3 levels, isn't it? So it's
that's the thing, and it doesn't have to just be a D6 chaff clearer. It can be a 3D6. Like, this is going to really hurt.
Yeah. And 3D6, 48-inch range at casting value 18. So you can hit pretty much the entire board at that point.
Yeah, it's just such a. To be honest, if I was only picking battle magic spells, it would definitely be in there because of how utilitarian it is. Like, I have deviated from the BRB, the Big Red Book, for just my last spell, because I couldn't consciously put a list together and not have this spell in there, because frankly I just love it so much.
Is it from the Lore of Vampires?
No, it's not, to be honest, because the Lore of Vampires is just incredible and I love it. Like, I just love it. But it's part and parcel of my love of VC, rather than the individual spells themselves. No, the spell I chose to sort of finish my list off with is a harken back to my days of playing demons and Cacophonic Choir from the Law of Slaanesh, which is just frankly one of the most ridiculous spells and hilarious spells in the game. So for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's a hex spell, which means it can be cast in combat. It's got a range of 12 inches, but it can be boosted to affect everything within 12 inches. And the target takes 2d6 hits. Right? Not minus anything, just a flat 2d6. That then wound on a 4-up, regardless of toughness, with no armor saves allowed, so ward saves only. And if you cause at least one wound, the units in question get always strikes last and random movement d6 until your next phase. And to target one unit, it's cast on a 12+, and to target everything within 12, it's cast on a 24. And like, of course, there's better spells out there, the killer spells, etc. But this spell is just outrageous. Like what it can do in a game, and it's just amazing. And if you imagine that on a flying demon prince, like the type of crazy things you can do is just hilarious.
I was going to say, isn't it that thing where you just do the whatever it is, the mage bomb into the line, cast the big version, hit everything, and then you've just trashed the entire coherency of the entire army, whether it does any injuries or not.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's like, I've won a game with that very tactic, and frankly, like thinking about it makes me smile. But then I'm not a very nice person. Yeah, it's very much a one-trick pony, but the one trick it does is an incredibly good trick. Like one, it kills things, but then because it gives always strikes last and random movement, the disruption it causes to your opponent is just, it's frankly ridiculous.
It's never happened to me, but I can imagine I would be like starting to snap the table if my entire line had just been the Cacophonic Choir had gone off, and now everything's random movement and not doing what I wanted to do. And I can move out a maximum of 1d6. That's it.
I was reluctant to put it in there, to be honest, because I was trying to stick with just the Big Red Book, and I was trying to stick with just an all-comers and all-takers spell, which is why Ash Storm isn't in there. But it's like Ash Storm's even more niche because it's Chaos Dwarf only, and there's not many of us out there. But I think Cacophonic Choir, because it can be used by Chaos, like warriors and demons, I thought I would, out of the top 5, I would just give myself one entry that was army specific, that I just had a special place in my heart, that I thought was hilarious enough to mention.
Isn't the whole Slaanesh lore sort of based on doing a bit of damage and then wrecking people's movement? Or
this is a slight aside because you mentioned Zenith, and this conversation really upsets us on a personal level because Zenith is the god of magic. He's my favourite Chaos god, like lore-wise. I love him. But his magic in 8th is frankly garbage.
Yes, it is.
But Infernal Gateway in past editions was incredible. Rightfully so, because he's the god of magic. In the current edition, like, don't get me wrong, it isn't bad, but it is a pale shadow of what it used to be. The rest of the Zenith lore is trash for the most part. And worst thing about it, if something passes a toughness test, you give them regeneration. And despite the fact that all of your spells and a lot of your troops are called flames of or flamers of, nothing's actually flaming.
Nope.
So you give your opponents a save against yourself for the rest of the game.
Doesn't strip regen, but does give your opponents regen.
Yeah. So Zenith really upsets us. And there's some disgusting combos in the lore of Nurgle, where I just put my book down, but one debuffs your toughness, and then another spell forces toughness tests and then kills you and keeps killing you until you pass a toughness test. It is a brutal combination. But I think collectively, Slaanesh magic of the 3 ones, the demon specific, is incredible. And if you're Slaanesh, you also get access to shadow magic, which therefore gives you access to Okkams. And if you're taking a Herald of Slaanesh, the Herald can give your entire unit all strikes first. So you're essentially an elf with a ward save.
And a Cacophonic Choir.
And a Cacophonic Choir demon prince flying around for hilarity.
You know when it says random movement, is that where you literally... do you have to roll the scatter dice to see which way you're pointing as well? Or is that... Am I confused that with something else?
You actually pick the die. No, you pick the die. It kind of used to be that. That's more like... But it's where you can pick any direction you want, but you then have to move D6 inches. And you can't choose to not move. You have to move D6 inches in a direction that you pick.
I just think if you've got into like a dwarf artillery park or something like that, just...
And that's it.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. It's particularly good against the type of armies that would castle up. Like all you need is enough space to land the character in question, or even if you can't get a flying creature into the middle to bomb the thing, which is amazing. Like just getting, if you've got say a herald on a steed, so essentially a 20-inch movement, you can get to where you need to be, and you can either then bubble it or target killer units individually. So you see, pick a White Lion horde for hires. If you can sneak one wound through their ward save, that unit you almost disable. You give them always strikes last, so you get rid of their always strikes first. But more importantly, you give them that random movement D6, so you totally nullify whatever the higher player was actually going to do with that unit.
Well, they can't charge, and if they can't charge, they're not in combat, and then they're not. There's no point in having them if they're not in combat.
And not just the White Lions. That was just because we could talk about it with more knowledge. But any Death Star unit you get that spell onto, you're going to ruin their lives, because you then can start dictating if and when you engage with the Death Star. So yeah, Cacophonic Choir, big love.
I've never had it done to me, and I really don't want to.
No, nobody wants it. It's awful.
I expect Graham will manage to cast it at some point. He likes his Slaanesh. Well, my last one, you'll probably not be so stunned to learn, is Fiery Convocation for high magic. It's probably my favourite spell in the game, just for both fluff and game reasons.
Yeah. No, I imagine you've picked that for the game. A lot of the same reasons I put Cacophonic Choir in there. It has a special place in your heart, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It's 90 to cast, which seems high, but if you're a level 4 high mage, you are +5 to cast, as I was saying before. So it's not that unachievable. It remains in play, which means your opponent has to roll 19 to get the thing off the unit. If they don't want it to keep having an effect. And every model in the unit is cast on takes a strength 4 hit at the end of every magic phase. Forever. So I've got some previous battles where I've cast this on big blocks of goblins, blocks of... is it Eternal Guard, the Wood Elf Spearman unit?
Yeah, Eternal Guard.
It's good against anything. There's not that much in the game that's strength 5 usually that ranks up. Yeah, it's not so great against like ogres and things like that. But if you've got a game about hordes, it's a horde destroying spell which won't go away. So you've already caused your opponent a nightmare by casting it in the first place, and then it remains in play. So you can just sit back and relax as the unit just gets incinerated. Because at some point, it's not actually worth trying to dispel it at 19. If the unit's half destroyed, then half destroyed again, is it really worth trying to save what's left of that unit with your the spell with your power dice in the next unit, next phase? So again, like we're saying with a lot of these spells, you're forcing the opponent to do and consider things in their own turn, or out of phase, or in multiple turns. So it's just one of my favorite. It is my favorite spell in the game, and it's so
Yeah.
appropriate to the army as well. And it's just when you vision the thing, like me, John, who was on the very first episode of this, we played I think it was Triumph of Treachery down in Warhammer World years ago, and he cast Curse of the Bad Moon. I think it is that the Vortex one, and that sort of went through whatever. It might have been Phoenix Guard, presumably, and he rolled for the strength, so they took a big hit, survived. And it's the mage is like, well, I'm not having that, and then just snap the fingers, and this massive fireball just explodes in the goblins and just incinerates them all. Like, I'll show you magic. I just like envisioning it as well. But it's really good in game.
No, I think that's yeah.
And on top of it, you get your +1 ward save to your unit. So
No, it's a very good spell. Like, there's no denying it. It's hard to cast. It's harder to then dispel though. And like you said, that dominates your opponent's magic phase if you get it off in your when you get off in your own magic phase.
I mean, it's 24-inch range, which you can't expand, you can't increase. But if you could increase it, it would be broken. I think 48 or 36-inch range of that's like you can grab anything on the board, more or less. Because again, the high mage is going to be in a block of Phoenix Guard if there is one, and he'll be mid board, relying on the ward save to keep him alive. So the fact that the high magic's slightly less range doesn't really matter because of the way you use a high mage. But just that's one of the ones where 6 dice fiery convocation, 6 dice fiery convocation. What can you do?
No, yeah, and there's, as you well know, I've got no issue 6 dice and something. And if anything, I applaud the people who do. And a lot of people might say, yeah, it absolutely is. Like, I play Warhammer because I want to cast magic. I want to use like big monsters like dragons, like Terrorgeist, Frost Phoenix, Kadai, dragons, Manticores. I don't whatever the monster is. Like, that's why I play a fantasy. If I just wanted to play combat, shooting, and movement, I'd play a historical battle game. But I don't.
Yeah,
I want to use magic. I want the fantasy element, which is why I love the Warhammer world. With everything we've spoken about there as well, can I one final shout out to the signatures in general?
They are really good.
Like, I quite often run my Lizard Men with Wandering Deliberations on a slan because they're incredible. I know High Elves can take is it the Lawmaster?
Yeah, the Lawmaster's got all the signatures.
Like, just very quickly, Fireball is never a bad spell. Wyssan's, we both agreed, is one of the best spells in the game. Seer and Doom, situationally, is incredible if you're fighting something with high armor. If not, you've got 8 other spells that are very good. Shems, again, is against the right opponent, is incredible. Otherwise, it's just another fireball. Earthblood, meh. Ice Shard Blizzard, we also both agreed is one of a very, very, very good spell. Melkoth, decent. Spirit Leech, depending on what your leadership is and who you're playing, is also comfortably one of the best spells in the game. Like, the signatures are incredible. And I think people almost forget about them sometimes because things like Final Transmutation, Purple Sun, Dwellers, Pit of Shades, because they exist and they're the big killer spells. Like, let's not forget that the good old signatures are genuinely some of the best spells in the game.
I fully agree. And when you talk about Lawmasters and things like that, not only are you getting the spell, you're getting the low attribute.
Yeah, so, no, that's
you cast
for everything.
Yeah, you cast an Earthblood fine, a regen, but you've then healed a wound off Phoenix or whatever,
Yeah.
and that could make a difference all the way down in the combat phase. So, yeah, really, really, really good, really useful. So that's our. We only had one that was the same, which was Wildform, but I think we pretty much agreed with each other on all of our choices.
I think so. There's so many good spells. You can't say there's a top 5 because there's not. They're all situational, and there's so many very, very good spells.
It has sort of boiled down to the ones I like the most, rather than
Yeah,
any sort of battlefield practicality, really.
absolutely. And I think obviously we also segued off a little bit to talk about laws of magic,
Yeah, that's
which
fine. It would be hard to do a top 5 laws because there's not that many of them to allow a big range.
no, you'd have to do your top law.
Yeah. Well, that might be an idea, actually.
But I think top law is more army specific than spells.
Well, it's not going to take a genius to work out what my top law would be. Yeah.
If I'm playing vampires, my top law is weirdly the law of vampires. You know, I think it becomes much more of a conversation when you're talking about the more mid-range armies and the armies that more specifically have access to the only sort of various ones from the basic laws. So, like, what's the best law for Bretonians, for example, who only have access to heavens and beasts? If memory serves.
That's something I haven't even considered because I'm just so used to you can pick whatever you want.
So, Chaos Dwarfs, for example, have got access to heavens, fire, shoot, or death. So on a level 2 or a 1, you may definitely pick fire for that fireball. Otherwise, let's be honest, you're picking death or Hashut, which is incredible. And death's probably comfortably is the most destructive law in the game. For Empire, who can take who don't have their own law but can take any of the laws in the book. That's probably when you can then have the conversation which law is best, because you can tailor your army to fit your law. So I think the conversation of best law is very army dependent, personally.
Yeah, because it's irrelevant to you to say the law of whatever is the best because half the armies can't take it.
Yeah, and likewise, I could argue Law of Light is potentially one of the best laws for Lizardmen, but it's also categorically not one of the best laws for elves. So it's army dependent and situational when you talk about the whole law, I think.
So the takeaway from this entire episode is we've learned.
Wyssan's is the best spell in the game.
I was going to say we've learned nothing, but
no, we've learned Wyssan's is the best spell in the game, and that high elves are ridiculous.
It's hard to disagree with any element of that, but we'll find out on Sunday when
I bring a fluffy Chaos Dwarf list to a tournament, and you bring an outrageous high elf list to a tournament.
Shane said it's not the worst list he's seen, which to a high elf player is like, that's a very fluffy list.
Yeah, I'm interested. Just to finish off, I suppose I'm really interested and looking forward to the tournament on Sunday because it's only 2,000 points, so it's a very unusual competition level.
You know now tournaments seem to be getting bigger, or some of them anyways. It's like the 3,000 points. So it's what do I put in to make up the 500 point gap? Having to cut down 500 points and no lords, for me, it was like this is really interesting because
no lords and Highlander.
Yes,
makes for very, very interesting lists. And maybe if you'll have us on again, we could do where we talk about the tournament afterwards.
Definitely, we'll do that after. But just in list composition and stuff like that, the restrictions I've found quite exciting. Well, exciting.
Agreed.
But it's like
I've enjoyed writing the list for the tournament.
It's been enjoyable to write the list because of these restrictions that I can't start with a level 4 of high or whatever. So what else have I got? I can't rely on the magic to do the damage. So what else have I got in the list? What else I've got in the army? So I've enjoyed writing this list, and it's I've done 3 practice games, and they've won. I've won 3 of them, which doesn't mean I'm going to win the tournament, obviously, but I'm quite happy with the list as it stands.
Yeah. Well, I've had 1 practice game, and it's the first time I played my Chaos Dwarfs in a couple of years, but it worked, so I'm happy. I'm happy with my list.
Because there's a good spread of factions, so I'm really interested to see the Chaos Dwarfs because I've only seen them once before.
You also get to see the model I have for my Kadai Destroyer, which I love. I think it's from Wood Axe Miniatures. It's beautiful, I think.
Well, so I'll be taking thousands of photographs and uploading them all over the place. So get some.
Yeah. Well, it's lovely to. You see, if you'll have us back, we can do a chat about how the tournament went. What our thoughts were. How did we find the different armies? That'll be really cool.
We will do that. We can get our lists and stuff on that one. Right. Well, thank you for coming on and discussing Magic.
Thank you for having us at long last.
Yes, it's been a year and a half in the making, but well worth it.
Worth the wait. But no, thanks very much. Appreciate it. We enjoyed it.
Thanks very much. See you all next time.